What it do, YouTube? It's your boy Mike from NYC. We back with another reaction. Today we are reacting to the bird tier list. I was watching the Kai Cenat E-Date stream yesterday. One of the girls asked him, what animal would you be if you could choose any animal to be? And it really made me think, because it doesn't really matter what animal you say as much as it matters why you say the animal you say. What is your thought process? Why did you decide to pick that animal over another animal? Honestly, I wanted to go with the eagle. Initially, I thought about a chimp or a monkey because simply that's just the closest animal to a human. But then I thought, if I could switch animals, why would I want to be an animal that's so closely related to a human? And I picked the eagle. And I was like, damn, is the eagle even the best bird? So it made me want to react to like a bird tier list, like which bird is the best, because I was like hawk or eagle or other, so that was my logic.
Birds are one of the most popular playable classes in the game, with a huge number of successful builds and tons of cool strategies. However, some of these strategies have clearly been more successful than others. So today we'll be going over the bird tier list to see which bird ranks highest. But before we get into looking at specific bird builds, let's do an overview of the basic attributes and special abilities the bird.
Oh my god, that rat is so fucking big! Gosh, he's so fucking huge, bro.
Has access to, as well as a rundown of the history of the bird faction.
Come here.
So birds are one of the newer factions in the game, joining the game's roster during the latter part of the Mesozoic expansion. They began as an offshoot of the dinosaur faction that was specifically adapted to arboreal gameplay, but when the devs dropped the Cenozoic balance patch, these small avians were the only dinosaurs not to be hit by the banhammer. Fast forward to today's meta, and birds are one of the most successful factions in the game, owing this success to a handful of powerful, unique abilities, in addition to the obvious flying attribute. First of which is their beak. Now, beaks were not an entirely new ability for the reptile player base, but birds went far deeper into the beak skill tree than most dinosaurs ever had, with many bird players opting for extremely specialized beaks to give them an edge in specific scenarios. However, even the basic beak offers plenty of advantages. While their lack of teeth does mean that they deal reduced damage with their bite attack, birds can be far more accurate with their pecking attacks, enabling them to hit weak points or secure grabs on smaller targets, such as the thin hurt box of a snake. Beaks also offer moderate protection, potentially reducing headshot damage and nullifying imprecise counterattacks. Beaks also offer some of the best stab type damage in the game, which, when used accurately, can deal massive damage on crit.
Damn!
Beaks are also excellent tools for dealing with parasites. In fact, they're so good that oftentimes other, less dexterous players will party up with bird support players in order to have a better matchup against parasites. Feathers are also a unique and powerful trait exclusive to birds that provides excellent cold protection without causing the user to become too over-encumbered to fly. Feathers also offer pretty substantial defense against crush-type attacks, which is especially important to birds because of their hollow bones trait. Hollow bones are another ability meant to synergize with the flying playstyle. Now, a common misconception is that bird bones are hollow in order to reduce equipment load, but actually they're hollow in order to let bird players fill them with air, which grants them a massive boost to their maximum stamina. Without this, it'd be extremely tough for a bird to fly for any significant period of time. The trade-off, of course, is that a broken bone not only deals serious damage, but also potentially reduces the player's maximum stamina by a huge margin. So a bird player will need all of the blunt damage defense it can get. And speaking of blunt damage, the bird's lower bone density means the bird's own blunt force strikes, like wing attacks, also deal reduced damage. The top tier bird builds are the ones that can best capitalize on the strengths of their class while mitigating potential weaknesses. That about covers the basics, so let's get into the tier list. The humble chicken, often compared to the T-Rex to exemplify how far the dinosaur faction has fallen. While I disagree with the implication, I don't disagree that chickens are indeed a low-tier build. While they aren't anywhere near as totally helpless as the kiwi or kakapo, they're still a barely average statted bird that lacks the ability to fly for any extended distance. They can certainly hold their own against most similarly sized opponents, but with poor escape options and no unique abilities, this build faces an uphill battle against most opponents. Well, okay, I shouldn't say no unique abilities, but to be honest, their fast respawn rate kinda backfired on them due to humans using the factory farming strategy. Next
Wait, I didn't really realize, I didn't understand why he had flamingos over chickens though. I don't get it. Flamingos are bigger. They seem like, it just seems that flamingos are better. We didn't really get any stats on that, but I would think flamingos are better. Like, I'd rather be a flamingo than be a chicken. Like, if I'm a flamingo and I could at least get in the water and like have like a little bit more of an escape route. A chicken, you can't really fly. You're small. Like you're like, I don't see why you would want to be a chicken over a flamingo.
We have the Vulture build, the tankiest variant of the Raptor subclass. A good tank build needs to be able to accomplish two things. The first is area denial, which Vultures do quite well. A few of them can easily lock down a carcass, one of the most contested points of interest you'll ever see on the map. They can do this because of their large size and acidic projectile attack. The other thing a tank must be good at is shrugging off hits, and this is where Vultures fall short. Their thick feathers easily shield them completely from smaller attacks, but because of their hollow bones, blunt fours can easily crush their defenses and take them down in only a hit or two. So while they can defend a carcass from hordes of smaller scavengers, they don't have much counterplay towards bigger, more aggressive brawlers.
The command post is now under hostile control.
The Woodpecker build spent the bulk of their evolution points optimizing and perfecting the peck attack, both in power and efficiency, with one goal in mind: to be able to hit insect players through cover. Burrowing is one of the safest, most effective ways insect players can avoid combat. But the Woodpecker absolutely demolishes this strategy. One of the main advantages of this strategy is that having a powerful beak that's highly effective at drilling through wood also just means you've got a super sharp beak that's highly effective as a general purpose weapon. One of the main disadvantages of this strategy is that pecking at wood gives the Woodpecker's location away, alerting more powerful predators to its presence while it's in the middle of pecking and is distracted. One particular Woodpecker build, the Toucan, opted to spec into more bulk and an even...
That is one of the most beautiful birds that I've ever seen. Look at the beauty of this bird. It's so colorful and beautiful. Like, the fur looks so nice. This is a beautiful bird, man. That bird is fucking beautiful.
Powerful beak, which, while less useful for attacking insects through the wood, is still extremely powerful for PvP. All in all, interesting strategy. By no means flawless, but definitely has some solid strengths. So, I know I've been pretty hard on flightless birds up until now, so you might be surprised to see me rate penguins as upper mid-tier rather than low-tier. The difference is, penguins actually swapped out their wings for an arguably equally viable alternative, flippers, which essentially allow them to fly through the water with incredible agility. This gives them a downright broken matchup against fish. However, this strategy is pretty much only viable on servers where there are no land-based predators that penguins would still need to worry about. So if for whatever reason a few polar bears ever spawn in the Antarctic server, it's kind of game over for that entire build. The predators they have to contend with in the water are even more dangerous, and while their agility does help them dodge attacks, ultimately it's still a totally one-sided matchup. Their strategy is pretty cool and actually fairly dominant due to limited competition, but I wouldn't be surprised to see the entire penguin player base collapse if the devs ever add new DLC in the form of an Antarctic land predator, or even if they just buff the land mobility of the leopard seal. Still, top of C tier is a respectable position for a flightless bird.
I could agree with penguins being pretty high just because they live in the Arctic, so it's like it's less, they don't have to deal with like cheetahs. All they have to deal with is polar bears and maybe like walruses or something like that. But you know, based on the environment that they're in, the fact they can swim, like I wouldn't mind being a penguin. Penguin seems pretty cool to be.
Bottom of B tier, we have the Goose. I've got an entire video dedicated to the Goose build, but in short, the Goose has solid base stats, including above average hit points. However, its abysmal power stat leads it to rely heavily on intimidation to secure territory. This can be unbelievably effective at times, and it's not uncommon to see top tier predators flee an encounter that they easily could have won. Still, the obvious flaw in this strategy is that if the Goose's opponent resists being frightened, the Goose will be wide open to a punishing counterattack. In addition, the Goose's weak spot is easily exploitable by intelligent players, so careless aggression tends to be the Goose's biggest strength and biggest weakness at the same time. All in all, still a surprisingly effective strategy. The Heron build put a huge amount of evolution points into maxing out the puncture damage it can deal with its beak, and it did so to great success. Herons have one of the highest damage pecs of any bird, and frequently one-hit their targets, even those with scale armor like large fish and juvenile crocodiles. The effectiveness of their piercing attack is amplified by their long neck, which gives their attacks a deceptively long range, giving their strikes an almost cobra-like flash to them. They have downright oppressive matchups against fish, amphibians, and all other small aquatic builds. One vulnerability they do have is that their flight ability has a lot of startup, making it a bit less reliable as an escape option if they do happen to get ambushed. Still, it's certainly not terrible. Another weakness is that their long neck presents a bit of a weak point, making lunging forward with repeated pecking attacks a bit risky if you get too predictable about it. Good players will be able to punish careless lunges quite hard. In high B tier, we have the Falcon, a raptor build that opts to defeat its opponents using speed and
I forgot about the Falcon. I forgot about that bird.
superior maneuvering rather than actual power. Falcons actually have a below average power stat for a raptor, and don't deal particularly high damage in close combat. Their talons are pretty small compared to hawks, owls, and eagles, and so instead of slashing and stabbing with their claws,
What the fuck?
Falcons actually punch with their feet to disorient or concuss their target.
Concuss.
And then finish the fight with their more powerful beak. In the right situation, this can deal absolutely massive damage, enough to one-shot a mid-sized target at full HP. The drawback of this strategy is that Falcons can only dish out high damage when they have the time to build up speed first. This makes the Falcon a pretty poor defender for objective game modes, and means the Falcon can struggle to win.
Damn.
Makes the Falcon a pretty poor defender for objective game modes, and means the Falcon can
That shit is crazy.
to win fights if its first attack doesn't connect, as follow-up attacks will likely not have the same force built up as the first. Still, the burst damage potential of this build cannot be ignored, so it earns its spot in high B tier. This might seem like an odd inclusion to cap off B tier, but Songbirds are a highly efficient build for their size, and do deserve recognition on this tier list. This is a huge group, including finches, starlings, sparrows, wrens, and birds of paradise. And while some are flashier than others, they all have relatively similar stats, with extremely high agility being their core stat. Unlike many of the builds lower on the tier list that have difficulty getting themselves airborne quickly, Songbirds have extremely low startup on their flight move, allowing them to reposition themselves easily and quickly. This makes their approach very difficult to punish, making Songbirds excellent at chipping away at defensive players, and makes them great at stealing loot from slower builds. Yoink! Their safety in numbers strategy can actually be somewhat intimidating and disorienting too, making it rather difficult to attack a party of Songbirds mid-flight. While they certainly aren't invincible, having one of the lower HP stats among birds, they're an often overlooked but undoubtedly successful bird build. At the bottom of A tier, we have the Swan. The Swan is essentially a goose that has the power stat to actually back up its attempts to intimidate. The wing attacks that most bird players use do very little damage and aren't very useful aside from pushing other players around. The Swan's wing attack can break bones and concuss foes. Because of this, Swans are one of the best builds at controlling important points of interest, as their hyper-aggressive playstyle can result in huge territory gains. Of course, they do have the same weaknesses as geese, so targeting the Swan's neck with an attack can defuse the threat. But this is a bit riskier of a play against a Swan than against a goose. All around, sturdy defender, definitely A tier. Next in A tier we have the Owl, the Avian faction's premier stealth assassin build. It owes this reputation to its special ability, which allows it to fly completely silently. This makes the Owl's strikes very difficult to defend against, as players just about never see them coming. While not as
That
stacked
is so smooth.
defensive defend against.
That is smooth as hell. The camouflage.
As
How smooth is that? Soundless, sightless, thief in the night. Like that bird. This bird might be like the most underrated cool bird. Like just the smoothest bird. Like the bird, it's like the underrated of birds. Like the one that not anybody really talks about, but when you really deep dive into what they're capable of doing, very much like, you know, unique builds with the 360, you know, vision. You know, they don't make any sounds, good camouflage, you know what I mean? They're kind of just like to themselves. They don't really have like, they don't seem like they have many natural predators, just kind of to the side, you know, quiet birds. They don't really make a lot of noise, even when they, you know, with their beak or anything. Just silent assassins, like a Damian Lillard type of build.
Just about never see them coming. While not as stacked in the power department as their daytime counterparts, owls do have quite solid base stats. While they aren't likely to one-shot high HP targets, they do have enough force behind their attacks to be able to defend themselves and their territory, even from powerful enemies. In addition to granting the owl the silent flight perk, the owl's thick, bushy feathers offer additional defense against attacks, enabling it to stand its ground in important objective defense scenarios. Interestingly, the silent flight perk did come at the cost of the waterproof ability that most bird feathers have, meaning that falling into the water or getting caught in a rainstorm can actually disable the owl's flight ability. A pretty unique weakness, and certainly something that can be played around, but interesting nonetheless. In the middle of A tier, we have the eagles and hawks. Hawks and
Wait a
eagles
minute.
fall...
These birds aren't even S tier, or is A tier the top tier? Because there's 6 minutes left, so I assume this is not the last bird he's going to talk about. So I'm interested to see what is the best bird build.
Same basic strategy, both having tailored their builds to focus on dealing maximum damage with their talons. Hawks are the smaller variants of this group, and because of this they are far more agile. While not as powerful as eagles, their agility enables them to weave through cover better than most birds of prey. This makes them well suited for rushing down players both in open terrain and in dense, difficult to navigate terrain like forests. Eagles, in contrast, are much more powerful, but their larger size and wider wingspan prevents them from entering dense forests. Still, in open prairies and mountains,
threw him off the
eagles can be
ledge.
incredibly effective, dealing absolutely brutal damage with their enormous dagger-like talons. Enough to take down players in higher weight classes without even requiring team strategies. These are without a doubt some of the strongest bird builds in the game for PvP, and have been for quite some time. At the top of A tier, we have the grappler tank hybrid, the Pelican. The Pelican's main strength is its throat pouch. Grappling enemy players can be a highly effective takedown strategy, but birds struggle with this since they can't use their wings to grab, and since their beaks aren't always the most reliable grappling weapons, sometimes leading to targets escaping. The Pelican's grapple is, in contrast, almost totally inescapable, and works on targets much larger than you might think. While this attack style is most effective against fish, it's quite powerful against other bird, rodent, and amphibian players, although it does have its limitations. This, combined with the Pelican's overall bulk, makes it one of the most difficult birds to take down in single combat, and enables it to stand its ground against even top tiers like canines. So those of you who follow the channel for a while can probably guess what the top tier birds are going to be.
Nah.
If you can't, that's probably a good indication that you should be subscribed.
My fault, Gengi. Oh wait, I'm already subscribed, so yeah.
Those of you wishing the devs could unban the Velociraptor build, look no further than the Secretary bird, as it has basically all the same awesome abilities and more. Hunting on foot and in pairs, they prove time and time again that striking from the sky is overrated. They can easily defeat other high-tier builds such as the Cobra and Mongoose with their high-damage kicks. Their stomp move has extremely high accuracy, allowing Secretary bird players to score game-ending headshots with ease. And they do all this without completely sacrificing their flight ability.
Wow.
If they ever find themselves outmatched, which only ever happens against builds in higher weight classes, they can still retreat to the sky or treetops. The fact that this strategy works in Africa, one of the most unforgiving servers of all time, is proof enough to me that this is the optimal raptor. These last two builds are about equally matched, both opting for the same specialization, intelligence. Parrots are an extremely unique build with several powerful abilities, not the least of which is their Sonic Shriek, which can drive away just about any player who invaded their territory, especially when employed by a coordinated team. In addition, due to their prehensile beak, parrots have the highest dexterity of any bird, putting them among the best users of the tool use ability. And with an extremely high lifespan, if there was any build that could replace humans if humans ever get their intelligence nerfed, I'd bet on the parrot. I made an entire video on parrots if you're interested, but when it comes to intelligence, there's one avian build that arguably outclasses them. With corvids, such as magpies, crows, and ravens, also opt for a high intelligence playstyle, but with a far more expansive social aspect to it. While plenty of bird builds use cooperative team strats, the best corvids operate using a network effect, where knowledge is shared with a huge amount of players over vast distances. This knowledge can include useful points of interest, or even blacklists of dangerous areas or players to avoid. But even individually, corvids have a lot going for them. With significantly higher stealth than parrots, corvids are much better at staying out of conflict. Their pointy beaks, while not as useful for tool use, are a much better combat tool for dealing quick damage. It's also more useful for pressuring and poking opponents, or for provoking larger players into battle, so that they can reap the benefits
What
of
the fuck? Did he just instigate a fight?
Combat tool for dealing quick damage. It's also more useful for pressuring and poking opponents.
I'm so confused. What is going on here?
Provoking
Tony Baker, we need a voiceover right here. We need a voiceover because I'm so confused.
Players into battle, so that they can reap the benefits of the aftermath. Corvids are one of the best builds at making use of human-made items, and quickly figure out ways of abusing the system to score quick loot. All in all, corvids are basically what you'd get if you gave monkeys wings. Easily a top-tier build. So there you have it, the complete bird tier list. Or rather, as complete as I thought possible for YouTube. If I didn't do a segment on your favorite bird, please let me know in the comments. Despite being the longest video I've ever made, there were still a few birds that I cut from the video for time's sake, or because I felt I couldn't discuss the bird properly without getting into territory that was potentially too violent for YouTube. If you're interested in watching the full director's cut version of this video, it's available to—
Hey man, that was pretty good. It was a little anticlimactic with the parrot. I didn't want, that's not the bird that I was rooting for. The eagle and the hawk were A tier. I was okay with that, but the I forget what the name of the bird is. The second to last bird that he named, this one right here. This one right here, that was the bird that I personally liked the most. It seemed versatile. It was good on the ground. It was good on the air. You know what I mean? But I see why he did these two up here, because they were the most intelligent. And intelligence is probably the most, or the best thing that you can have as an animal for the most part. That's why human builds are the best builds. Not because we're the biggest, the strongest, or the fastest, but because we're actually the smartest. And when you're smart, you know, you have a lot more to work with. You know what I mean? You use what you have to the best of your ability. But definitely like, comment, share, and subscribe. You like these type of videos, and I will see you when I see you. Peace.